So good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining in. We have a very special interview scheduled today with Aditya Sharda, the founder of Infra.Market. So Infra.Market is a one-stop source for every category of construction material, including ready-mix concrete, aggregate, paints, construction chemicals, steel, cement, etc. And they have been in news lately for their fundraise, uh, an online idea which is growing very, very fast. And that's why Construction World decided to talk to Aditya and figure out how they have been skyrocketing. So Aditya, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you.
So Aditya, how did you hit upon this need for this kind of an enterprise? Just give us a quick background.
So if you see, Pratap, the industry, as in we have an industry experience cumulative as a founder for around 20 years, and I myself have been entrepreneur and looking at this sector for a very long time. Okay, and if you see the entire industry is pretty much distorted, right, in terms of supply chain, in terms of branding, and there are a lot of SME players available in the ecosystem, right? So while there are large players, your top guys being, let's say, called Ultratech or the JSW or the ACCs, right? But in lot of product categories, they only have a 25 to 30% market share, and still a lot of regional players dominate the market share, right? So, and there is the entire missing point of a brand at a tier B level, right? So there are product categories like aggregates, concrete, which are dominated by a single regional player. Okay, so the idea was to make up a single brand, multiple product company, okay, across all regions. So from that is where we got the idea. Of course, when we were bootstrapped, we were piloting this idea only in the Mumbai markets, or I should say Western markets. But as we got the funds, as the playbook got ready, and we got a good interest from the investors, we started scaling this up to even the other regions.
So what was your business traction at that time when you just got your first fundraise in terms of sales and all that?
So I think just to give you brief numbers at when we were bootstrapped, right? The first year 2016 was a 12 crores revenue, right? The second year 2017, so the March 2017 was around 12.5 crores. March 2018 was a 28.5 crores. March 2019 was a 60 crores revenue. So these 3 years we were completely bootstrapped yet profitable, and we got the first funds from Axel Partners, which was in the June 2019. Since then, I think the numbers have been growing at least 4x. So March 20 was somewhere around 350 crores. March 21 we have closed around 1100 crores. Despite a COVID year, we could grow four times.
Yeah, I was quite surprised at that number because I think you're clocking in even in March 21 around 270 crores just for that month.
Yeah.
So what have been which verticals have been the main drivers contributing to this growth?
I think we have a pretty diversified portfolio, I should say, right? So there has been a healthy contribution from the chemical section, the concrete, cement, steel. I think there's an all round. So no single category contributes more than 50 to 20%. Like a 20% is a max contribution that we look from any single category. Right. So, we are also well diversified across regions, right? So we have a very dense presence in the southern regions of Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka. We are just starting Tamil Nadu. Okay. We are already present in Kerala, and even in the Western markets, we are going beyond Maharashtra. We're going to the internal Maharashtra and looking at Gujarat State. So if you see overall, there have been a healthy, the jump up in the volume is not because of any single product category, but it is diversified product categories and diversified regions.
But isn't Mumbai still your 50% of your contributor to your sales?
I would say that Mumbai, not Mumbai particularly, but yes, Maharashtra would still be a 50%. Slightly over 50% would be in contribution.
And why would that be? Because yours is an online space, so why would that be?
So, okay, so on online, I should tell you is that our model, why it is online, the real execution is more hybrid in kind of nature. It is online plus offline. So you have to understand the ecosystem is still not ready or that adaptive. So the tech adoption or the online pure push, we are still pushing it through the ecosystem. People, our dealers, distributors, channel partners, vendors, clients are still adapting to it. So in the real time, as of now, if you call me, we will say we are more of a hybrid model, number one. Okay. And number two, I'm sorry, I just missed your question. What was it?
No, so if it is online, why, why?
Oh, okay, yeah, you asked me why Maharashtra. Okay, okay. So I think it goes back is because as a company, we're extremely dominant and strong in Maharashtra, right? So like we have like a 6 years presence. So by default, it's a better foothold. So how I see it as like when we start any region, okay, it takes us typically 3 quarters to build out the entire team, right? And then 3 quarters from then to have the basic sales starting in, okay, dealer distributor network being set up, supply chain set up. So it's almost like a 6 quarters where we are barely known in the market, and then slowly the numbers start coming in, right? So Maharashtra being 5 years old, right? So we have the supply chain extremely sorted. We are very well known on the B2B brand, B2B sales. Like we have got all the top, be it a real estate or infrastructure company in our portfolio, right? And even on the retail. So I think Maharashtra is, because the company inherently, we were from Maharashtra, it's a very easy seeping through us to expand the market share.
And cement and steel together must be constituting around 50% of your sales?
No, I don't think so. 50%. It would be around, I would say nothing more than 35%.
Oh, really?
35%. Yeah, nothing. And I think I would even include cementatious to that thing. So if I call about cementatious, yes, 50%. But then let's understand that cementatious is a very, very big product line.
Admixtures and...
It includes concrete, it looks
concrete.
It's a lot of products.
And so I was also, looking at the margin, which is just your margin as EBITDA margin has shot up now 7% plus.
Right.
Because of your diversification, or is it because of moving from tier 1 to tier 2 cities? Where is the margin you've been able to gather?
Right. So I think, so typically, as I told you, like to establish a product or establish a region, it's a 6 quarter cycle. The same way it functions on the supply chain side, right? So my supply chain would be weakest when I start any region, right? And with time, we improvise on supply chains on the vendor base. So automatically, if we start any region over a period of 4 to 5 quarters, the margins start coming in by default, right? Because for 2 reasons. One, your demand starts increasing, right? So your purchasing power or your bargaining power with your vendors become better, okay? And on the other side, even on the vendor side, we get a lot of diversity with time, okay? So improvisation of margins is anyways a function of time that we have always observed. So for example, if you look at my concrete margins in South market, right, vis-a-vis in the West markets, it's huge. There's a huge difference, right? And even in South, if I look at my margins in Chennai versus that in Bangalore, there would be also a gap over there, right? My Karnataka, my Bangalore margin would be at least 15-20% better than what my Chennai margins is, because Chennai is just 6 months old and Bangalore is 1.5 years old. But now that you compare it with Mumbai, my margins, there would be a huge gap, because here we have built it up, right? So improvisation margins come as and when you become better in the market, the margins automatically improve, the credit cycles improve, the vendor management improves. That's one. And consciously, we've also started going on the retail side, right? So from a B2B company, it's been a year now that we have diversified into retails, where typically the margins are better. Okay. So I would say for 2 reasons, as we are becoming veteran on the supply chain, and because we have diversified on the retail side, that has led to an increase in EBITDA.
So during the COVID time, please explain to us that your sales have grown maximum at that time, right? 4x or something like that. Then you had logistic challenges as well as far as deliveries are concerned, and which lots of manufacturers actually dealt with. So what is this collaboration between the manufacturers and you in terms of dealing with the logistic challenge? Do you take this on your own, entire supply kind of this thing, or how do you do this?
That's right. So I think consciously or as a strategy, we have always built our own logistics, right? When I say built our own logistics, we have our own vendor and we have a logistics control over an arm's distance, right? Because I think if you see, a lot of my products are commodities, right? So when you're essentially selling commodity, it's never a commodity sales that you have to focus on fulfillment and service, in which warehousing and logistics becomes an important part. So we consciously, as I told you, we as founders, we had a cumulative large experience of the industry. So from day one, we have been having logistics in our control only from a fulfillment angle, right? So let's say there is a client who requires concrete at a certain given point of time, right? A concrete is typically a 3-hour shelf life product. Okay. So you're not selling concrete, you're selling the service of logistics and fulfillment, right? So there will be a number of times where we are able to give that service better than the top branded players. And that is why we have won the big clients. So logistics was always one of the forte where the company, we have invested our time and resources. And I would say we are above the industry averages, the industry average, the standards, we are above that. So that helped one. While in the COVID times, I would say when there was a national lockdown, of course, the business was not there, right? That was away. But I think overall, as industries opened, there was also a spurt in demand, right? The spurt in demand was in cement, steel, all commodities, because this was an artificial demand created, which also helped us because we were better sorted on the supply chain. We could completely cash it out, right? So while there was this spurt of demand created, not everybody could cash it out, but I think there is where we had an edge and we could cash it out completely. Okay, so that was one reason that there was a massive increase. Secondly, as I told you, that we had diversified into retail, right? So the retail presence also helped us. Okay, on this supply chain, we could get all our product categories on all the retailers. So that helped us on the increased revenue. And third is obviously exports. So like, when you were a COVID struck, okay, so you typically get a lot of time when you take a break, right, from regular business, you typically get a lot of time to think through that. How do you de-risk your business? How do you diversify and make things more, get your business more in control? So exports was one of the things that we concentrated, right? So for a larger time, the exports remained uninterrupted. So our export volumes kept coming in as a company, which gave us that consistent numbers. So a mix of all these three things helped us clocking that kind of revenue.
But I see that you maintain a zero inventory kind of a policy. Given that situation, your logistics has to be extremely well timed in terms of pickup and delivery and stuff like that. Then therefore, and warehousing would be playing a very limited role as far as that is concerned.
Right. No, while we maintain zero logistics, there was a lot of, so we have a very refined process to understand and map our demand. Right, so a lot of inventories, right, also sit on a contract manufacturer side or on the vendor side. Okay, so while yes, as a company we want to be on a zero inventory or a minuscule inventory, I should say, not entirely zero. We sit on a minuscule inventory. There's a lot of inventory that we manage actively on the vendor side and on the client side. Right, so the fulfillment, the end consumer does not feel the heat of the fulfillment, because if not me, my channel or my ecosystem is holding the inventory.
Why retail stores, Aditya? Because if you aren't you then seen as competing with your dealers or anything like that? If you put up retail stores of your own, how does that meet with your objective of not maintaining a zero inventory and everything else? Again, you will be caught in the similar situation as.
Oh, okay. So I think I'll have to let me put a thought around this. When I'm saying retail stores, these are franchisee owned retail stores, right? It's not owned by us. Okay, and we on compliance angle also, we cannot own and operate the retail stores. And anyways, these are not our own stores. So when I say retail store, infra market stores, these are typically Dodo stores, dealer owned, dealer operated, right? Where we take up a store so it could be just another guy in your locality who has been handling a cement store since years. So we will basically do a tie-up with them, increase their product portfolio. Right, because if you see what is a typical, I think in all the metropolitan cities, you will see if there's a hardware store, they'll only limit themselves to hardware products, hardware and paint. If there's a cementatious store, he'll only rack up cement, wall putty, plaster sand, and that's all. If there's a steel guy, they always do. So the unique thing about infra market stores that we tie up is that, let's say there's a cementatious guy. What we offer him is a bunch of products, right? So we tell him that, hey, you have a store where you have been sitting, your fixed cost remains same, your rentals, your man-hour times, the electricity, the salary remains same. But instead of just selling 4 product lines, why don't you take 6 more from us, okay, and have a better wallet share from your customer, right? So that's the value proposition that we offer. And that's the reason we have seen a massive tie-up with the distributors, right? Because for years, there was no company who was offering them a diversified range of products. Okay, and help them, enable them, empower them to have a better share in market share. So a lot of our dealers were never into sales of, let's say, steel, right? They were never into sales. So why we give them, we sample out the products to them, and today even if they clock in, let's say 50 to 100 ton steel, there is an extra revenue they are making just because we enabled them, right? So the stickiness comes from there. So typical infra market store is a branded infra market store, but it is dealer owned, dealer operated, where we are just enabling them on the supply chain.
Tell me about your
So
working.
it's complementing to dealers and not competing to dealers.
Agree. Working capital cycle. I mean, now,
Yeah.
I mean, how does that work? Because I see that your debtors still are high in terms of, relative to your sales, or is that because of the growth?
I think we are maintaining a net working capital cycle of 58 days, right? 57 to 58 days was what I was looking at my last month numbers, which is pretty much in average and industry standard, right? But of course, I'm telling you at a blended level. So there could be some product lines where we are slightly stretched, but there are also product lines where the payment cycles are much better, okay? And we work against, say, banking lines on an LC or a PG. So net off is 57, 58 days, which is very much industry standard for a B2B company.
How have the exports done? I wanted, since you referred to exports, how has the experience been with exports?
I think export has been a good experience, right? So we do a lot of flooring and granite work on export side. We do chemicals, we do granite. Okay, so so what is the idea? Like, what is the Inframart as a concept? The concept is we want to be an asset light manufacturing company or asset light fulfillment company. Okay, as I told you, a lot of these product lines are completely distorted, right? Completely controlled by few men. So when I look at granite, these are typically mine owners, right? So in the supply chain, if you see, there is one who's only a mine owner and who just wants to be a mine owner. Then there is a range of supply chain of the factories who do into processing or who are into cutting, polishing, processing of it. And then there's a layer of sellers, right? Or the marketeers or the middlemen. And then there is an import house, and then there is a consumer. So there is such a huge meat available on the supply chain. Essentially, what we do is we do an end-to-end tie-up, right? Right from the mine until the consumer. So my value proposition comes to consumer. I am an end-to-end solution, right? So not only I will go and source the mining, right? I will source the rock, get the geological quality check done, get the right certificates, the logistic, transport it to the factories, get it polished, cut into the right sizes, export it directly to the consumer, right? So when there is so much available, there is so much, I should say, middlemen or opportunities available in the supply chain, right? If somebody actually consolidates it, there is enough to explore. So I think granite has been going good for us on exports. We exported to the markets of Jordan, Dubai, US, European markets. It's going good. And typically, I think we as a company, we like all these things. You know, the more distorted the product line, the more complex the supply chain, right? It excites us most, because the more complex it is, the better the margins, right? Right. If it's a vanilla commodity, you will not make margins. So be it a concrete, be it aggregates, be it granite, these all excite us, and that's the reason where a hefty margin comes for us.
So in the unbranded segment, or let's say weaker brands or smaller markets, when you're sourcing products from them, it's like a white label thing. Are you going to be marketing under infra market brand? You have an infra market brand, right?
Absolutely. So I think we've already launched private label brands across various product lines. I have infra market tiles already out, bath fitting, sanitary ware is already out. Okay, we have infra market walling solutions, that I would say an AAC block, wall putty, brick jointing mortar, ready mix plaster. We've already launched infra market brands, right? And I think we are closely looking at paints, plumbing, cement. Okay, of course, while we have infra market cement in South market, but can we have an infra market cement at a pan India level? We're working very closely. But yes, eventually private label is the story that we are eyeing closely.
But then aren't you taking on a lot in terms of quality? Because each of these products have to stand the test of quality against their peers.
So if you want to make a $10 billion company, aren't you supposed to do all these things, right? Like, we have to take more on platter, not only aim it, but also deliver it, right? So we want to be the next biggest construction company in India, a single brand multi-product company, and maybe much bigger than even a Decagon, right? So I think that's a part of the business, right? You have to fix supply chain, you have to fix sourcing, you have to fix quality, quality controls, right? You have to do a lot of branding and marketing exercise, you have to do sales, you have to do collections. So I think that's a part of the business if you want to go at that big, right? So we don't see ourselves just as an aggregator. We see as an end-to-end fulfillment company across wholesale sales, that's B2B, across retail, that is franchisee stores and the distribution network, and eventually even e-commerce, right? So on the fulfillment side, on the demand side, I want to be everywhere, and on the production side, while we extend the sales services others to a lot of brands. Eventually, I also want to have an intra-market brand, because branding gives me more moat, right? It gives me more stickiness with the customer, right? I just don't want to be the biggest distributor of India or biggest aggregator of India. I also want to be a brand, right? So that's the overall plan, right? A 4-year plan.
So Aditya, last question. What is
Yeah.
your target for next year's turnover, and when is the IPO coming?
I think for an IPO, I think we'll wait 3 to 4 years, because there's enough on our platter that we can do and then capitalize on the opportunity. And the opportunity is huge, right, Pratap? If you look at on the stock exchanges, there is single product company, be it a Havells or a Kajaria or a Prince Pipes, or let's just pick up a product category and the companies are valued at $3 to $4 billion. Right? I want to be a 7 to 8 product category company, right? And I want to be an omni-channel and a distribution network, an e-com company. So I think we have a lot to explore. So while we are profitable and we're growing, we are not, as founders, we are not looking at a hurried IPO. I think I want to take up enough from the table and then get a lot of value unlocking for the investors. So IPO is definitely nothing less than 3 years for us. Okay. Next year's numbers, I think, so we'll be at $1 billion run rate already, say next 3 months. The overall numbers of March 22, we are looking at somewhere around 5 to 6,000 crores top line, right? Which will be again a 4x or a 5x growth, right? So I think we have a visibility of 4,000 crores for sure. Internally, we are looking at if can we make it better than that, right? But a 4x growth is least, I think, what we should walk away with.
Wow, that's a lot on your plate. So my best wishes, all the best.
Thank you, Pratap.
Thank you for speaking to us, Aditya.
Yeah, thank you, Pratap. Thanks for your time.